You're listening to the What's Happening podcast with Gary Watts.
Good morning. I'm here this morning with the Mayor of Cedar Rapids, the Honorable Tiffany O'Donnell. So great to see you, Madam Mayor.
Honorable. Thank you. Thanks, Gary. I'm still getting used to it. 1 year in, I'm getting used to it. But
so what's it been like to be mayor for a year?
Oh, it's been great. And on a serious note too, when you would say the Honorable Mayor, I have to laugh. I don't laugh as much because you don't live somewhere 20 years and not have relationships, and certainly relationships within City Hall. So initially it was, kind of odd to have one of my best friends who now, is on staff at the city call me mayor in a conversation. Yeah. And what I quickly realized, though, is as odd as that felt at first, there's a real purpose for it. It is a position. And anytime I'm called mayor or asked a question as mayor, it's sort of a level set, and it's a good boundary, and I understand that my answer is needs to be as mayor. Right. So as unusual as it feels initially, I've come to really appreciate when I am addressed as mayor, understanding that that is in the capacity in which I'm being spoken to, and my answer matters. Right.
Well, we're going to get into a lot of projects in Cedar Rapids, but first, I just got to ask you, why'd you run for mayor? Or tell me what your thoughts were leading up to running for mayor.
It is a little crazy. My mom would say more guts than brains. That's kind of been a theme in my life. But honestly, I just saw a need. I love this city. I've been here 21 years. My husband's fifth generation. I'm originally from the Quad Cities, by the way, but I've lived here the longest. And I have kids who have moved away, and I want them to come back. And I want my friends who follow their kids to want to move back. We have so much happening in Cedar Rapids, and I just felt that we needed, somebody who would be willing and able to tell the story wherever it needed to be told. And just leaning on my experience as a reporter and journalist, and then, most recently as a CEO of a nonprofit that advocates for women in the workforce, everything just made so much sense just to step out and try it. And I couldn't be happier that I'm here. If you love your city, honestly, I'll tell anybody who's listening, if you love your city, there's really no better job.
Right. It's easy. Tell me about the women's group.
Women Lead Change. Yeah, Women Lead Change. Been around 15 years. I started there as a volunteer, honestly, when I was working at the television station. And honestly, one thing led to another, and they were looking for a succession plan. And they hired me in 2015 as a chief operating officer, worked under the CEO for 2 years, and then in 2017 became the CEO. So it's an organization that's based in Cedar Rapids, but we have offices now in Des Moines and the Quad Cities. We are dedicated to advancing women leaders. I would say workforce development with a gender lens, understanding that we have half the population that isn't quite represented that way. So if you're not investing in women, you're leaving money on the table.
Right. Well, it's a great way to mentor ladies, too. I've got 2 daughters. I'm sure they would love that.
Oh, you do? See, we find people like you to be the best allies. I always say, give me a dad with a guy with a strong wife, strong kids, daughters.
Yeah. We raised them pretty independent, too, so they
do
a great job in the business world that they're in. One's a lawyer, and one worked for Turner Broadcasting System. So,
excellent.
Yeah, they do wonderful things.
Well, and fortunately, we're at a place in time where, companies do recognize that. We're a 501c3. Women Lead Change is a 501c3, and we are completely privately funded. Companies see the value in developing all their leaders. We just happen to have unique content that applies to women and allies, frankly, in the workforce.
So you ran for mayor again. Let's go back to that. You're more guts than whatever you call it.
More guts than brains,
so. And then you were elected here about a year ago.
It's been a year.
So what's that year been like?
Wow. A whirlwind. And I think we knew intellectually that there'd be a steep learning curve that first year, and that certainly bore out. I look at the first year as really laying the groundwork for what we are implementing this year. And that would be really zeroing in on priorities, things that I talked about: economic development, amenities, quality of life, housing, which you understand very well here, really zeroing in on that, and now implementing a lot of those. We've got feasibility studies out for downtown revision, feasibility studies out for updated Greenway, our riverfront plan. as well as a multi-sports plex that our residents have been clamoring for. So the rubber hits the road this year. And I keep saying it's a bit of a maniacal pursuit because I'm guaranteed 4 years in one term, and I've only got 3 left in this one. So we really, as you know, government doesn't always move as swiftly as we'd like. So it is a maniacal pursuit to get that stuff done.
Well, I imagine a lot of listeners don't realize how much work's involved in being mayor. And you're probably going all the time, a lot of meetings, and it's quite a job. And the amount of information you have to process to be on council or be the mayor is amazing, because I know several people that do that. And I don't think people appreciate what you guys do.
Well, thank you. It is officially a part-time job. I say
Right.
it's a 60-hour-a-week part-time job. You don't do this job though if you aren't passionate about it and you don't enjoy these conversations. I am so grateful to have a seat at the table.
Right. Good. Well, let's get into, a couple things that went on through Cedar Rapids, the derecho.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we could talk about that briefly. And then obviously 2008, the floods that happened. And then maybe we can start getting into some of the projects that are just some really super things going on in Cedar Rapids, exciting projects. But maybe start, one of the things I just highlight just from my own mindset on the derecho, I came up with a chainsaw and I worked around Matthew 25 and Time Check area
Yep.
a couple days. But one of the things that I saw with the derecho, just from my own, I'm a native Iowan, been my whole life here, and I love Iowans. And one of the things that happened that I saw in the derecho is after it happened, nobody sat around, nobody whined, everybody got a chainsaw or an axe or whatever, and they just went out and helped each other. And that was truly Iowans at their best. We didn't get a lot of national press. I think it wiped out 70% of Cedar Rapids canopy.
Oh yeah,
trees.
every property was touched.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all the equipment that had to come in from all over the country, and the power was down. But I just appreciated the amount of effort that Iowans put into that.
Oh.
So that was my perception. And like you said, you sometimes on tornadoes or hurricanes, it's where all the national press goes. And nobody really kind of came into Cedar Rapids. I didn't see much, but I went up there about 4 or 5 days afterwards, and I thought it was like a war zone. I'd never seen anything like that.
Really,
and
well,
hope I never see it again.
Thank you for doing that, by the way. I appreciate that. It would have
it
been a
was
lot
great.
easier for you to stay back and help from afar, but
Right.
to have you in town is great.
It's hard to be in a bad mood when you're trying to help people.
It's
So,
true. That's
you know what I
very
mean?
true.
So
Sadly, we know about that in Cedar Rapids,
Right.
and I'm glad you asked about it. I don't like to, I'm very much a forward-thinking person,
Right.
and I think it's really important that we leave that behind. I think it's also such a huge part of our story today because all of that development that we're talking about, I think about the Nubo City Market back when I was just a volunteer. A founding board member of that when it was just an idea. I was a part of that capital campaign because the city said, we've got this piece of this area of town. We need something that's going to drive development. And we knew that the Nubo City Market was going to be a linchpin. That was one of my first experiences with the power of a great project and public and private support. Because of those disasters, we had an influx of cash, for lack of a better word. We had federal support. We had state support. The city was able to muster up funds to really lift up our city following 2008. And it gave us an opportunity, really. As awful as that was, it gave us an opportunity to reimagine what we wanted our city to look like. So, post 2008, you felt a real vibe. There was all kinds of building and development going on. And then you look at the derecho, again, horrible. Every property touched.
Right.
A million trees we're going to need to replant. What the city does, though, what Cedar Rapids is known to do, we are coming back better. And I think as mayor, it makes me so proud to say not just better, but better for more people. And it was just like the floods. We took that opportunity to say, where do we need the housing? Where do we need the affordable housing? Who hasn't been served? And how do we serve them? Same with the derecho. The neighborhoods that get the trees first are the ones that didn't have them before the derecho. So really using these as opportunities to reimagine who we are as a city.
yeah, they were horrible disasters. But then look what you turned around. Look at Nubo right now.
Oh.
And we'll show some slides coming up. But all the projects. So maybe we can get into next from the floods and a little bit, if you want to talk about what's going on with flood mitigation and how you're handling that, and then maybe we start showing the folks some of the projects that are exciting going on in Cedar
I would love
Rapids.
that. I would love that.
Great projects.
And you are certainly, the Watts Group certainly a headline of all that, so we're so grateful. The river is something that we've always turned our backs on. And by the way, it's earned that. We just talked about the floods of 2008. And it is an absolute beautiful center of our city. And so this city council has committed itself to that greenway. And so you are starting to see development. And, I think the first, most obvious you'll see will be the First and First. That is a mixed use building. It has something called the Pickle Palace, which we know the pickleball craze is everywhere. It's got a beautiful public space. And then certainly Big Grove Brewery. Right. So happy to have them so committed to Cedar Rapids. You'll see a hotel behind there. You'll see, walk-ups. This is right off 380. Right. So this is something that you'll see. And I should also mention, as a part of the river, in front of that, part of the river recreation plan is in front of there, where you'll see, a ramp for kayaks. And there's a whole plan to go, in and out and on the river and off the river from right out in front of that First and First West. And that's that Kingston Village area, which is also, we've got Newbo, we have Kingston. Right. And yeah, I mean, it's affordable. It's a mix too, I should mention, of affordable housing, as well as market rate housing, which is also really important to us.
And the McGrath Amphitheater is fantastic. I've been to several concerts.
Have you?
They have great venues there. I saw the Doobie Brothers. I think Peter Frampton.
Did you really?
I'm old, so I kind of get into these old groups.
I'm with you
the
on
guys
that.
can still play.
I bet they can.
They still can play.
It's a great facility too, and the restaurants that are popping up
Yeah.
around there too. It's really becoming. It's just lovely to see the districts forming, and that's one of the things that our council has as a plan are these 15-minute walkable, bikeable neighborhoods. Right. So you will see that in Newbo and Kingston, where everything you need is in one spot.
Go from the kickstand to the sag wagon and
it's
around.
Great.
So.
And I don't know if you've caught up on any of the live music scene there. The Ideal Theater is really kind of leading the charge and making sure we've got, that's one place for live music, but you can walk down to Parlor City, hear some live music.
And all kinds of fun. Well, let's go back to First and First, Austin.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that, because that's a great property. I think Almond Companies brought that to Cedar Rapids. You can see the steel going up now on the freeway. Mm-hmm. And what is the Pickle Palace?
Pickle Palace is pickleball.
It's pickleball. Okay,
yeah, it's pickleball, and it's led by a guy named Greg Cohn, who owns multiple businesses, but the Black Sheep is one of them.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
So he's got a great reputation and a really fun vision. But that again,
nice looking building.
Isn't that fantastic?
It's great.
And I think it's important to note when we talk about flood protection, this is all part of everything is raised. The berm that's in front of there will have trails on it. You can see the plaza there. I think there are plans for a big screen in there and an amphitheater. So it's a mix between private investment that is also willing to make sure we have a public space.
Well, if you live there, you got all kinds of things to do. Big Grove is fantastic. They're in Des Moines too. The one in Iowa City just has a lot of people on cycles, and it's a great place to gather. Yeah. So you have a lot of housing units. So.
Mixed use. So you'll see there toward the back. There'll be again housing on the upper levels and retail, and shop fronts and business on the lower level.
Producer Austin here, coming in quick for our audio listeners. We are showing a couple renderings here of the different projects in Cedar Rapids. So if you want to see pictures of what we're showing, you can check out a video version of the podcast by going to wattsgroupiowa.com/podcast, or you can just search the What's Happening podcast on YouTube and find us.
Great. So that's called First on First. So
that's
just getting underway, and it's going to be a fantastic project.
And that's Kingston. Now over in Newbo too, as you well know, we find that a lot of people want to live over in Newbo. Right. So you see there you go. I mean, absolutely beautiful.
That's a great plan. Go back to that, Austin. And they have art on the side of that building. I thought that was a nice touch.
And the murals on the side, for sure.
Very nice.
And we got a dog park happening.
Right.
You guys know a little something about the dog park? Yeah, we find that when we do the studies of the neighborhood studies and surveys, people want dog parks. I'm right there.
Everybody has a dog now, right?
They do.
I think everybody does.
I do too. And certainly in that, that fits the person that wants to live there too, or the people that want to live there.
Right. And I think, I've talked to some of the other counselors, and they said that every company that's looking at Cedar Rapids wants to know where the folks going to live, and they need more housing. And maybe you could address that a little bit. I didn't realize what the housing needs were in Cedar Rapids, but it's amazing.
It's amazing. I think we've discovered by 2030 we're going to need something like 7,000.
Wow.
And we're at about 1,500 now on our way to that. But yeah, there's definitely, it's all good. It's all great, but we have needs. And I am specifically interested in infill. So when you see, Loftus Lumber, for example, which is a market rate housing, that's an opportunity that's going to be sort of one of the gateways into Nubo. You see some of the you can. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's great. And that's the old lumber company, wasn't it?
It is. So. And it really will become kind of the gateway off 8th into Nubo, and that's market rate housing. So.
And that's across from Bottle Works, right?
Yes.
Just
right
north. That's
adjacent
a beautiful
to there.
Building.
Yeah.
That'll be a great project.
And that's
too.
Dave Drown. Yeah, that's a Dave Drown project.
Good.
And then we've got some projects. The hub is over, by our colleges. People don't always think of Cedar Rapids as a college town, but we've got Co and Mount Mercy that are, again, right there adjacent to. You've got Mound View and Wellington Heights. It's sort of in the middle of that.
Right.
So the need, again, for our young professionals to have a place. And that's the hub.
And that's between Co and
Mount Mercy.
Yeah.
Yep, that's over by Co and Mount Mercy.
So maybe you could just start, Austin, maybe just start at the top and we'll just talk as we go through.
Yeah.
Because we're
There's
kind of
a lot.
around. There's a lot. Yeah,
I know.
they're just hard to. So
really
back,
is.
that's first on first.
That's first on first,
Right.
yeah.
And then that's an aerial. And then what are you doing down by the river?
Okay,
Can you talk about some of the fun stuff going on?
Yeah,
in
that's
Greenway?
that river rec. That's the river recreation. So you see sort of that on-ramp and off-ramp there for kayaks.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I see it over here to the
And
right.
again, that's flood protection, Gary.
Right.
And I think when God forbid any other city has to go through what we went through,
Right.
I do believe if anyone does, though, they will look to Cedar Rapids as the gold standard because that is an example of flood protection.
Right.
Just like the art at the amphitheater. The art at the amphitheater is actually a flood wall. So we've been super intentional in making sure that, we're not fortifying the city. We're actually, using berms to create bike trails, art to be a flood wall. Removable flood walls on the east side, which I think is also important. So you've got walls that are 3 feet high so that businesses can have and restaurants can have outdoor eating. And then should we have a flood need, we put in removable walls that become 6 feet. You add another 3 feet on there. So between rooftops and removable walls, we're able to
So you can make the walls into an amenity. I think that's neat. And why not use the river? And if you got kayaking and things, I think that'd
absolutely
be fun for everybody to enjoy.
Absolutely.
Have the city received, was it $200 to $300 million from the feds to help with the wall? And where's that funding? And how's that going?
Okay, so yeah,
I didn't open a can of worms.
That's it. Well, I will just tell you the short version is we will have spent $1 billion.
$1 billion
when all is said and done, and we're about 20% of the way there, which tells you just how great this need is. And by the way, how great that distraction has been.
Right.
That's why this is so exciting for us because we feel like we're finally in a place where we can actually move forward with ideas. We're not distracted by that $1 billion investment. And that's the east side of the river too, thanks to the Army Corps of Engineers. So there's been a lot of federal support and state support, and we need more. And we need more. And then the city council has committed, I think, $10 million in from ARPA to make sure we can accelerate the west side flood protection.
How much is done? How much?
20%.
20% of the wall. So
Yeah, of the flood mitigation. So, and these are things that a lot like streets. I'm learning. These are things that we plan years out.
Capital
So,
improvements probably 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely.
Right? You set up your budgets.
And what's also interesting about flood protection, time check, which I think maybe your listeners, if you've been to Cedar Rapids, you can see, during the flood, time check really it was just decimated. And we were able to, as a city, clear a lot out of there, including underground infrastructure. Right. So that's why that area will likely get its flood protection sooner than the others because it's primed and ready. You can't just put a flood wall in.
Right.
You've got electrical underground. You've got pipes and plumbing and sewers. And so, one piece of flood protection is not just one piece. You think about all of the partners that you need to be, collaborating.
There's a lot going on with that.
Yeah. African American Museum. This is,
Okay.
African American Museum of Iowa. It is the only African American museum in our state, and they are undergoing some really great improvements.
Is this the building they're going to improve, or they're going to build this building?
They're going to improve.
The building that's existing in Newbo, right?
Yep.
Czech Village.
Yeah, you can kind of see what they're
nice.
doing to that.
Okay.
Then we've got the annex on the square. This is, again, just a new one of the new mixed market rate and affordable housing rates.
Where's that at? Annex on the square?
That is that may be the you may
It's a good-looking
correct me
building.
here. It is. I'm wondering if that's what we used to call the Banjo Block.
Oh,
Do you remember
okay.
Banjo Block?
Downtown.
By the library.
And then just maybe stop there, but maybe as we're looking at this, and you mentioned the Banjo Block,
Yeah.
talk about maybe for a few minutes the revitalization of downtown, which is another great thing you guys are doing. So can you highlight that a little bit?
I can. Thank you for asking. A lot of cities, and not just Cedar Rapids, every city that has business downtown is really dealing with the new workplace, and it's a hybrid workplace. And it's going to be that way for the foreseeable future that we see, where we've got people in the office a couple days a week, not every day like they used to be.
Right.
So, we have to reimagine how we use our downtown. And to help us out with that, we went through an extensive request for proposal process with some of the best of the best, and have identified a firm out of Denver that's going to come in and help us identify what's working downtown. What are, some ideas for the new way that people work? Is that more buildings? Is it more green space? We know that we've been able to convert some businesses to housing down there. What does that look like? So we're very serious and have just, like I said, hired a company out of Denver to help us reimagine what our downtown looks like.
Did I see something in the paper with a community center or rec center?
That too. Yep. Separate project, but that's actually, we just sent out that request for proposal for the feasibility. No, we actually identified, we just identified somebody who's going to do the feasibility study for that. So that'll help us identify, if there is a need, which we believe there is, what are the needs and the desires that'll work for our market? Where should it be located? What's the size? The estimated cost, all that stuff. So, yeah.
That's a good idea to be on top of it, because a lot of the larger cities, commercial real estate sitting vacant, and some of the employers are going, you got to come back at least 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's going to affect restaurants and bars and all the entertainment downtown. So that's a good idea to reinvent that. I think that's
We
a
have
great
to.
plan.
We really have to. And I think, again, as somebody who's focused on infill and a healthy downtown, it's critical that we don't let that wither on the vine. We've got some beautiful facilities down there, and how do we repurpose them? And there is a role for the city to play there too, and the state, frankly. Are there ways to incentivize developers and builders to repurpose? We know it's not cheap to do that kind of stuff. So what are the needs, and how do we support?
Great. So what's this project?
Okay, Boys and
coming up?
Girls Club. Okay, this is
Okay.
this will be a brand new building over in our Wellington Heights neighborhood, meeting, again, our boys and girls where they are, identifying who typically uses our Boys and Girls Club, and then trying to make it as easy as possible. And I should note, it's not going to be just for boys and girls. This will also be a tremendous resource center for
neighborhood.
those in the neighborhood. And I love that you skipped ahead to the 8th Avenue Bridge.
Yeah.
How about that? That's also, by the way, flood protection.
Really?
Yes.
That's
okay.
beautiful.
And here's why. You see that one pylon in the middle?
Right.
Right now you've got multiple pylons, which on the existing bridge, that is also lower. So this is higher. It has one pylon, which helps mitigate floodwaters, as opposed to, which water can pass through there.
That's just down from the Lions Bridge, right?
Yes.
Toward
The 8th Avenue, it's the 8th Avenue Bridge right now. And I think what's also critical about this bridge is that during the floods, this was underwater, which meant you had one way in and out of Cedar Rapids, and that was 380. Wow. So as it relates to, emergency vehicles access, which, by the way, that's also located to some of our most vulnerable citizens.
Yeah.
This by improving that, by raising it, and not only making it something we can all be, prideful about too. It's flood protection.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Make it an amenity.
Yep.
So Cedar Lake, that's been there a long time, and this is exciting to me to see how that's getting cleaned up.
Oh yeah,
amenities.
Connect CR. That's a big Connect CR project. Which again, taking that eyesore, truthfully, and turning it into something massive, and utilizing the opportunity for flood protection along there too.
Right.
There are opportunities for us to help fortify the city there in terms of watershed. So that is, the Connect CR project. We will, as a part of that, have 100 miles of trails in Cedar Rapids by the fall of next year.
Really?
So when you talk about, our city becoming a location for trails, not only because of that, but also it's that 8th Avenue Bridge, too, is one of there's a pedestrian bridge going in Newbo. That is the only trail across the Cedar River. And so that you will be able to bike literally coast to coast through Cedar Rapids on a trail.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know.
I come up sometimes and ride from Solon to Ely.
Oh, do you? You're a bike. You like the trails, huh?
I love the trails. Of course, you got all the little bars along there, which are fun, and so it's a lot of fun. The trails. I haven't been all the way through CR, but that's neat. They're going to connect. Okay, so what's this project?
Brickstone. That's another. I'm not sure. I don't know all the details on the Brickstone.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about that one. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
well, how about that
I do
one?
know this one.
Yeah. We're laughing because it's Douglas on First, which is an absolute, just a real gem right next to our historic Bruce Moore.
Yeah, got great views of Bruce Moore. It's nice. It's coming along. We're have a model, I think, ready mid to end of February. So we're getting it done. It's kind of fun.
I think this, but when you add amenities like this, what happens around it, when we take a larger view as a city, we'd love to see what comes up around that. Yeah. So, great. And that is beautiful. I have some friends who are already tenants. You mentioned one of them. So that's great news. Yep. And there's Loftus, which we talked about on the way into Newbo.
Across from Bottle Works. Mm-hmm. This is Newbo. Mm-hmm. Fusion. That's our property in Newbo. So.
Yeah, you guys, how's that going?
Great.
We keep every time we see the elevator shaft go up, we're always
what's another one going in, right? So.
That's great. Yeah, it's and I should note too. I talk a lot about infill in our downtown. When you look at where our housing is growing too, we've got spots on the south and the north side. College Community to the south, that area, and then to the north, we've got the northeast side.
So
there it is. That's the kayak. That's the on and off ramp for the kayaking in front of First and First.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's a nice. Oh, there it is.
And that's going to be massive, by the way, in terms of. You can imagine the river hasn't been dredged in a long time. I mean, there's a lot that goes into making a river usable, and that's going to be a long process. But lucky for us, the state is really focused on placemaking. That's what they call that, and so we anticipate an award, for example. The Iowa Economic Development Authority, it's called a Destination Iowa grant. We've applied for a grant that will help us, not necessarily with this project, but down the way for the Roundhouse, which is a thing in Cedar Rapids. There was always this, it was a farmer's market, and the building was actually round, and it was called the Roundhouse, and it was destroyed in the floods and hasn't been back there. So that will be we're anticipating some funding from the state for greenway development that includes that. And that's a skate park, Riverside Park. Great. That's also going to be along the river. We right now using a temporary skate park. We have quite a few skateboarders in our city. Yeah. We've learned that. And we like them to stay here and not go, to Des Moines.
Right.
They don't need to go to Des Moines. We're going to provide, a lovely and hopefully a competitive place for them to work on their craft.
That's one thing I've never figured out how to do. I stay off skateboards.
It's probably a good idea. It's probably good that you and I
probably
don't
a little
do
too
that.
old.
Well, yeah, it's probably good.
Yeah. But I see the kids on them all the time, and they look like they're having fun. So, so what's this? And then, by the way, on the back to the kayak launch, is that state funds that will help you with that, or is that part of Cedar Rapids?
We have to ask for state funds. It's usually a mix of all of it. I mean, we can't, and we don't want to do it alone. I mean, we will need support for that. This is, again, though, when you talk about flood protection in plain sight, all of these have opportunities for stormwater basins.
That's good.
Again, making sure we have a watershed. I think it's also, the housing is, we need housing because we have an increase in business too. When you talk about, the Department of Transportation, for example, called us, the fastest growing region, and literally fast-tracked, which you don't hear DOT and fast-track often together, but fast-tracked improvements to Wright Brothers Boulevard, that interchange off 380 by the airport, because of the growth that we're seeing there. And, companies like FedEx that built there, British Aerospace, BAE that built there, Allrose Steel, now an expansion to Little Drugstore Products, Sub-Zero, which is building a brand new facility, Worley Warehousing that's expanding. The business community is expanding for us as well, and it is such great news.
It's good for the tax base too.
It's absolutely, and I've also learned that one of the real special qualities of Cedar Rapids is our diversity of industry. We've got, not only do we're the largest corn processing city in the world, literally, which is insane to think about. All the frosting made in Cedar Rapids, fruit snacks made in Cedar Rapids. We also are known for our logistics, trucking, basically because of our location, trucking, warehousing, aerospace, defense. It's just, I think it's really served us well in having a variety of industry here. So when one may suffer, we have others to lean on.
Well, it seems like the industry's been coming on strong in the last 5 years. All the properties south of Wright Brothers Boulevard towards Swisher. Yeah. Seems like most of that ground in there has been gobbled up, and there's warehouse after warehouse going in, or businesses, or
that's definitely amazing. There's so much growth. Yeah. So much growth out there.
It's great.
I think BAE wants to expand too. So we've got existing businesses and family businesses that want to expand too. That's the other thing I think I need to mention about Cedar Rapids that makes us unique, or at least is an identifier to us. Women Lead Change, I have an opportunity to travel across the state. We're in all kinds of different cities, and people ask, what is the Quad Cities like? What's Des Moines, Cedar Rapids? And they all have, we're a small state, but we are like culturally different. Sioux City's way different than Dubuque, for example. Des Moines, very, insurance, corporate, more transient. Cedar Rapids is independent. We are builders. We are builders and creators, entrepreneurs and owners. It's a part of who we are. When my husband's family, for example, their company made the gas lamps in downtown Cedar Rapids, however, many eons ago. When the paradigm is, your parents own businesses, people own businesses. It really is a part of our paradigm here. It's not unusual for people in Cedar Rapids to create and to be entrepreneurs. And I think, Nubo Co. is doing a really great job of becoming known as a center that has a holistic approach to entrepreneurship. So we can support you with capital. We can support you with mentorship. We can help you get started. We're really leaning into that identity. And I think it's part of why we've been so successful too, frankly, coming back from those disasters. We just figure it out.
Right. Yeah.
We don't wait for somebody else to tell us how to do it. We figure it out. It's just what we do.
And then I think you got a great folks like Debbie Durham in the state with the economic development the state throws out at workforce housing. It's been wonderful. And they spur on projects, which is good for everybody.
Oh,
it gives you diverse housing. It gets you, affordable housing. It gets you all kinds of things that are, I think, a benefit to everybody in the state.
I agree. We are so fortunate. I'm glad you mentioned Director Durham because she gets it. I mean, this was somebody who, ran the Sioux City Chamber. She gets business. She understands business. And it all works together. We can't talk about bringing businesses and economic development without talking about housing, without talking about amenities. She gets that. And IEDA has really supporting us in, whether it's helping us, give incentives to businesses to come here. It's also helping fund the roundhouse along the river because it all goes together.
Another thing about Cedar Rapids I just thought of, what a joy it is for the airport. What a great airport.
Gosh.
I mean, they're renovating it. It's clean. It's great. It's easy to get in and out of. What a treat that is. I mean, do you have any comments on the airport?
Oh my gosh, it is definitely a source of pride. I mean, and I'm not objective, but I think you could ask anybody who's been to any airport. I mean, including Des Moines. Throwing some shade toward Des Moines. I don't know if you've been to that airport, but our airport is, a gold standard. And it's also, I think we ship the most. You may know this, but the governor signed a law that does, we used to tax airplane parts, which, people could eat. It's expensive when you're, anything on a plane is expensive. So people could easily go to Illinois or Wisconsin and have their planes serviced annually for less expensive. Well, the governor eliminated that tax, which opens us up to a lot of opportunity. And Marty Lenz at the airport is very aware of that, working very closely with Kirkwood to grow a mechanics program. We know there's a shortage of mechanics. And again, leaning into our aviation identity. Collins Aerospace, for heaven's sakes, founded here.
Right.
Wright brothers flew here, lived here.
Right.
So, really leaning into that, and it's an economic development opportunity.
Every time I go there, the parking lot's full.
Yeah.
At my age, I got to take a picture of it. Is it F2 or F1 so I remember where I'm at when I come home. But the parking lot's usually full.
It is. It is.
So that's a real nice amenity.
It is. And marble bathrooms. When I'm 95 years old, God willing, I'm going to have this little factoid that I'll be able to tell people. And I was the first to use the loo. At the new loo at the Eastern Iowa Airport. Not as mayor. I was just a patron, and I happened to be there when they opened up the tape.
Right.
And I said, "Oh, can I go in there?" And they said, "You'll be the first."
That's an incredible place.
How about that, Gary? That's something to be proud of. Mayor Schmayer. I was the first one to use the loo at the Eastern Iowa Airport.
Hey, something else I wanted to mention is, talk about the financial strength of Cedar Rapids. A lot of people don't realize how strong it is. You got a great city manager in Pomeranson.
Yeah.
And but anyway, the bond rating and all that. What a tremendous job the city of Cedar Rapids has done with their bond rating and fiscally responsible. You want to
thank you for saying that. And it does go back to the city manager. Jeff Pomerantz is the best, the best anywhere, much less in our state. And it really allows us freedom as a council to be able to say, we want to develop the river. We want new businesses. Right. We want people to come here and build. Jeff has such, because he's kept the books, because he has been so responsible. For example, we may be losing the state, right now is debating whether or not we need to send back what amounts to about $2 million from the city of Cedar Rapids to the state based on an error that the state made. All cities in the state, by the way, are facing this right now. I think they're deciding this in the legislature this week. But because of Jeff and his responsibility in keeping that budget, that's not gonna kill us. $2 million is not great.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. Cedar Rapids will be fine.
Right.
We have reserves as well. And so it allows us to continue on. I don't want to diminish, the effects of that. But you think about smaller cities that are going to be having to give back money. We are in such a better position when things like that happen or disaster happens because we have been so fiscally smart.
And what's your bond rating? Is it 3A or 5A?
I don't know.
It's several A's, I think.
Okay.
It's really strong.
I don't know.
So when I called you about the podcast, I think you're headed to D.C. Tell us about that.
Yeah,
trip.
U.S. Conference of Mayors, which is where I think 300 of us convened. What was so interesting about it, excuse me, it was cities of all different sizes, including, Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles. The big ones, Miami. We all face the same issues as cities. These are all bipartisan or nonpartisan positions, which I think is also interesting. And they can be nonpartisan because streets are streets.
Right.
We all face infrastructure issues. We all face issues with homelessness. We're all talking about workforce. How do we get more people to live here? We all have the same 3 or 4 issues. So it was interesting to be together, not only from a networking standpoint, but then also we heard from all the cabinet members about the money that's available, by the way.
Wow.
And as a conservative, it's a little hard for me to listen to, how much money? Wait, first of all, where are we getting all that money? But then second of all, as a city, how can I help? How can I help, get some of that for Cedar Rapids?
Yeah. Otherwise, they'll be spent in other areas. I guess one way to look at it.
Right.
So what other projects do we have, Austin, if you could go back to that? I mean, did we cover all of them? I mean, I'm just
We did cover a lot.
It's a reimagine downtown, a vision of the river. I think we got a lot of that.
We did. I mean, it is a great time to live in Cedar Rapids.
Right.
I will say that.
I've never seen it so vibrant.
It's really phenomenal.
Since we've been, up there looking around the last 2 or 3 years, it's just one thing after another. It's incredible.
It really is. And I also need to give a nod to the city council. Our form of government in Cedar Rapids, it's part-time mayors, we talked about that. It's also, I have 1 vote. I'm 1 vote of 9. So our council is extremely engaged. We have committees, we have council members who are infrastructure committees and public safety committees and development committees. So everyone really has their hand in what we're doing. And it's very much a consensus council. And after being at the U.S. Council of Mayors and hearing some nightmare stories about councils that are political, they get kind of mired in politics, we have not had that with this council. And it has made us effective. I think it's what's also allowing us to move at the speed we're moving because we are so aligned on what needs to happen. And it is not political.
That's nice to have them in alignment.
Absolutely.
That everybody's pushing and agree on things, and then you can just focus on it and move forward.
Absolutely. And I think one of the hard things for me coming in as never, being in a position like this, open meetings laws require that, if we meet all together or even communicate in an email thread about business all together, that's all, as it should be, available to the public. I will also say, as you know, negotiation, deliberations, persuasion, influence, most of that happens in small groups, in rooms off the major room. So that has been a bit of a challenge in terms of, being able sometimes to get that consensus. But I will say, this council, as an example, if I were the only that felt a certain way on an issue, I would probably check myself and at least ask the questions, why am I the only? Because this council is, I believe, so wise and all very mission focused on the greater good in Cedar Rapids.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
What other things do we have to talk about here today?
Well, welcome. I'm glad you mentioned welcome as our language because that is, when we talk about being a place that people want to stay, this is really critical. I mean, we can talk about diversity and inclusion, all we want. If inclusion isn't first, it's kind of a waste of time. And I'm putting on my women lead change hat here a little bit. But if we can recruit people to come to our city all day, but if we don't have churches, markets, a culture of people that are welcoming and appreciate people who may look different than we are, we're really not going to get anywhere. So really being intentional about making sure that we have amenities and an openness to anybody and an appreciation and a respect for anybody who wants to be here.
That's great.
Oh, that's the restaurant scene. I've got to talk to you about that too, because
Cobble Hill
while we love our favorite, our favorite chains, a lot of us have favorites at Olive Garden and others. We also in Cedar Rapids, it's a new day for us, and that we have some 40 plus locally owned restaurants. We've got and we actually have a James Beard honoree at Rodina.
Really?
I know.
Huh, I didn't know that.
Chef Sam Charles has just been honored, which is incredible.
That's great.
On a national scale. So
I didn't realize there's 40.
Over 40.
I would have never guessed that.
You would have never said that before.
No.
And like I said, it's we like to have something for everybody, and that is really something we've never been able to boast before. So it's a wonderful addition. Oh, women's wrestling. We got to talk about women's wrestling in Cedar Rapids. We're getting more and more attention as a city because of our work alongside the Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships. That's only going to grow. We've got Division III wrestling. We've got Division II and III volleyball tournaments here now. So, again, continuing to lean in. Our districts, we talked about Kingston Village and Newbo. The district in Newbo Czech Village is really emerging. The bridge used to divide these two, and I think now when you travel over there, you'll see as much on both sides of the bridge between, Cafe St. Pio, the boutiques and shops, Hospita, Pizza, Lion Bridge, all those. Yeah.
They closed. They closed the bridge down last summer, and I went to a party there, and it seemed like they had tables, they had food across the bridge. That was a blast.
Wasn't that cool?
I got to meet a lot of people from Cedar Rapids, and you're right. There's an entrepreneurial spirit.
Oh man,
it's a business climate. It's just great people. You're right. People have been there a while, live there, and want to work there and do business there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I sensed with it. I had a blast.
Dinner on the bridge.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Yeah, it was.
That was a good night. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be happier about the direction we're headed and where I see our priorities are. Economic development, we have to continue to push for industry, and we have to make sure that we have the people, and that means having things for people to do that are here and making sure that we are attractive to people who aren't here yet. And you will be seeing efforts. This is a bit of a tease, but we're stepping out of our state to find people.
Good.
You should know that there's a real effort here, and we'll be rolling that out officially here in the coming months. But knowing that we don't need to keep taking people from other cities in Iowa. Let's make sure people everywhere know about our trails, know about our river, know about those restaurants and the housing and the districts and the dog parks. We've got a great story to tell.
Then maybe we can get your daughter back from Houston, right?
I am optimistic that will happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of it. It's similar to Iowa City Corps. A lot of people leave. They think they got to go to Chicago, New York, or whatever. It looks glamorous, but I've seen in real estate in the last few years, people are coming home. People are coming back, especially after the pandemic. Mm-hmm. They're coming back to the Midwest. They're coming back home. Maybe it's not as attractive in those large cities, what's going on, and they want to come home and the Midwest values. So
for sure,
we can't underestimate Midwest values. I think that's incredible.
And affordability,
right?
At the end of the day,
yeah.
Especially if you're able to work in Chicago,
right,
and take advantage of the day to day. Here, it's definitely becoming a stronger case.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Thanks for all you're doing too, by the way. I love it when others recognize the work. I live there. I live in it. So it's always interesting to hear the perspective of others who've chosen to come to
It's
Cedar
a pleasure because, from the environment I've seen at the city, it's a can-do environment. It's how can we make it work? How can we help? What do you need? And I'm not used to that, where people are actually, seeking us, they want to talk to us and then understand kind of our situations and then understand the city's needs and then see if we can help with that. So I think public-private partnerships are a key going down the road because in order to make things work, you are going to need some incentives and the state helps, like I said, with workforce housing and the TIF districts and urban renewal. Those are really important. Otherwise, without them, it's really, with the costs of everything going in right now and the cost of apartments, it's hard to make it work without it. So
I know.
That's a real plus that you guys recognize that. So.
We do say we find a way to yes.
Yeah.
In Cedar Rapids.
Well, great. Well, unless you have something else.
I don't.
Maybe McGrath Amphitheater. I would just that is so nice.
It has been. I think I've seen Diana Ross there. You said I think REO was probably the biggest one we had there. But.
Kansas, Peter Frampton, Doobie Brothers. So if you haven't been to Cedar Rapids lately, I'd tell everybody to get up there and take a look. It's a great place. It's vibrant. Things are happening. With all the amenities coming along with flood control and the berms and the bridges going across, the pedestrian bridge, the trails, 100 miles of trails.
100 miles by the fall. Yeah, I know.
That just, and if you want to ride your bike and
And not just
venues.
the summer. And that's the other thing. You'll see fat tire bikes. You'll see
Yeah.
fat tire bikes going around. And we also have a little controversial, but our bikers love them. We have a significant amount of biking lanes.
Yeah.
So really, again, as a city, making a commitment to our cyclists and safety at the same time.
And I saw that with COVID. Our office is on Oakdale and here in Coralville, and when COVID hit, what are you going to do? You can't really go out, can't go to a movie theater or whatever. So I saw people walking on trails. I saw people on bikes, and I think that people realized after COVID that you got to stay healthy, you got to stay in shape, and they started getting out and recreating. So with cities like Cedar Rapids and obviously Coralville do a great job too. Having the trails connect and having venues. I saw something on what's the area out east of town, Bertram Road, the trail, Indian Creek.
Yes.
And
yes.
there's something going on there where they're going to have a single track trail with bikes and stuff. And it's different, like fat tire bikes. So there's all kinds of things to recreate with. And I think that'll attract more of the workforce and people from around the country that want to be here.
I hope so too. We do have, I think I was at the Indian Creek Nature Center not long ago. And in there they have the trails that are, mountain bike trails as well as, other trails. So.
All kinds of things to do. So
anyway,
it's been fabulous to have you here, Mayor O'Donnell. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate being asked because, I do. It's one of my favorite duties as mayor to talk about our city. And I just couldn't be more proud.
It's easy to do.
It is.
That you have going on. So
thank you.
Anyway, I'd like to thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.